What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Real Hooks at Outdoors. So today we're going over my best bank fishing tips. This is going to be geared a little bit towards summer, but we're going to have just bank fishing tips for everybody in general. It doesn't matter if you're fishing a pond or a lake or a river, whatever. If you're fishing on the bank, no matter what time of year it is, these tips are going to help you catch more fish. If that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. Alright guys, so we're basically just going to run through these tips as we're fishing and as I'm going through the process. So tip number one is actually going to start before you even get here, before you even get to the bank, and that's going to be the planning of what spot you're going to versus what time of year it is, and then also what you're going to use. So obviously that's a lot to go through, so that's something that you might want to do a little bit of research on. I have a lot of helpful tip videos, equipment reviews, all kinds of stuff like that on my channel. If you want to check those out, refer to my playlists. But essentially you just want to make sure that you're doing some pre-planning, you're finding the right spot, that you're allowed to be there, that you know fish are there, all that stuff. It's okay to do a little bit of exploring, but just make sure that, one, it's safe to be there, you are allowed to be there, you know what time of year it is and what gear you need to have with you, and that way you're having a good time and catching some fish. Okay guys, so now that we've done our pre-planning and we're at our spot, we're gonna go ahead and start walking up to the water. Now this part is also super important. A lot of people are just gonna walk up and start fishing right away, but before you get all the way up to the water like what my son is doing right now, what you want to do is you want to, first of all, stay quiet. Second of all, you want to take a cast maybe about 5 to 10 feet off the bank, because there might be fish sitting up on the bank that you're not even aware of yet, and you want to be able to get those guys without scaring them off. If you walk right up to the water and you're being super loud and you're throwing stuff around, then you're immediately scaring off fish, and maybe, who knows, maybe there was a 5-pounder sitting there that you never even knew about. Alright guys, so my third and perhaps my most important tip is to make sure that you're comfortable while you are out here, because the biggest thing that's going to keep you from catching a fish is not having your line in the water. And if you are not comfortable, you are going to end up leaving early. I can't tell you how many times I've been out on the bank and I'm dehydrated, I've walked 2 miles, I'm uncomfortable, I got bitten by bugs, I didn't bring the right equipment, I had too much equipment, and I just end up leaving. It ends up being too much and the fish win, and I just decide, like, you know what, it's going to be best if I just try this another day. So with that being said, you want to make sure that you're understanding your conditions, which is what we talked about in tip number one. But for example, like today, it's almost 100 degrees. So there's no way I'm not coming out here without sunglasses, a hat, hydration, very important. Okay, I'm bringing some cold ice water with me and like a hydro flask in my backpack. Maybe you want to bring a snack, whatever is going to keep you out here to keep you comfortable. And then just from a health and safety perspective, like bug spray, especially in the Midwest and the South, like super important. Making sure you're watching out for ticks and spiders and just, you know, mosquitoes, like all that little stuff that can bite you. You know, some bug spray definitely makes a big difference. All right guys, so for my fourth tip, we talked earlier just about being comfortable. One of the things when you're bank fishing that's gonna really help keep you comfortable is not bringing too much stuff with you. It's super easy to load up your bag with like everything you have and a bunch of snacks and, like, you know, whatever. That's all fine and dandy, you know, if that's all stuff that's going to help keep you comfortable, but there does come a point where you're just carrying too much stuff. And especially like if you're walking a couple miles, like that's going to get really difficult to carry over time. You just have a backpack while you're out here. Like, you don't have a boat with a rod locker and all kinds of storage, and, you know, so it can get really hard to find things in your bag when you need to, and everything can get pretty hectic. So what I like to do is keep it as light as possible. I try to use one box for multiple different types of lures, and instead of bringing quantity, I'm more so bringing quality and a little bit of diversity, just some stuff that I think I'll need, but I'm keeping it as light as possible. Okay guys, so for tip number, I believe it's number 5, I don't know, I didn't really write all these down, kind of doing them as I go. Use versatile lures, stuff like Senkos, finesse worms, chatterbaits, crankbaits, things that are going to catch you fish really easy in a lot of different scenarios. Jigs, jerkbaits, things like that just kind of work in all different kinds of scenarios, because one, that's going to keep you from having to carry less stuff with you. Two, you only have a limited access to certain areas, so you want to have things that are going to work in just a multitude of scenarios. So for example, this Zoom Magnum Finesse Worm, this is going to work like in all different kinds of scenarios. It pretty much is going to catch me fish anywhere, anytime. Use stuff like that. It's really helpful, and I find that oh, and I have a fish. Oh my god, he's a big one too. Okay, we missed him. No, we missed him. I was sight fishing for him. I thought he had it and he didn't. Like I said, guys, versatile lures. All right, guys, so I believe this is tip number 6. Now, we talked about being comfortable. Now we're going to talk about being uncomfortable, like intentionally. So everybody and their mother is going to go fish the spot that's nice and open and easy, and not walk through mud and go around all these bushes like I am right now, because they want to be comfortable. And so if you really want to be hardcore and you want to catch a lot of fish, a lot of the time you're going to need to get really dirty, really uncomfortable, go back in these nasty areas that nobody else wants to be in, and that is where you will find success, because that is where fish are going to be a lot less pressured. And you'd be surprised how many fish you catch and how well you'll do in these little back areas, these little, you know, cutoffs and areas that people just don't want to go through. Tip number 7 is something that honestly, kind of brutal, maybe brutally honest, you might say, but some of you guys definitely need to hear it. Stop feeling sorry for yourselves. Honestly, I'm not saying that everybody's doing that. I just know that some people do. And what I'm talking about is the idea that because you don't have an expensive bass boat, or you don't have expensive gear or an expensive kayak or whatever, that you can't go catch a fish from the bank, and that is baloney. You definitely can. I am going to be beating the bank until I die. I don't care. I don't care if I had a $100,000 nitro with a 2025 lifted truck to pull it with. I am still going to be out here on the bank. Maybe not as frequently, but I definitely would be. It's just, you know, it's my roots. It's where I came from, and there's nothing like it. It's fun. You know, it kind of just, it's like fishing when you were a kid. It's a little bit nostalgic. And on top of that, you will get access to some really great ponds, rivers, creeks, stuff like that, that other people won't get access to, that maybe you could put a kayak in. But you know what? There's always going to be one type of access to every body of water, so long as it's legal. And if all else fails, it's almost always going to be from the bank. So don't feel like because you don't have all that expensive stuff that you can't go out and catch a fish, because that is absolutely not true. All right, guys, so tip number 8, and to be honest with you, I don't know how much this one truly matters, but I've always kind of practiced it because it was just something that was taught to me, and that is to wear clothing that's kind of dark. I'm not saying you need to come out here and wear like camouflage and stuff like that, but I just know that my dad taught me growing up to wear clothing that's like not so fluorescent, you know, like maybe a brown or black t-shirt, you know, I don't know, stuff like that. I get that it's probably not the biggest deal ever. Maybe you guys don't think it works. It's just something that I've always done. So I'm going to go ahead and add that tip in here just because I do feel like it is relevant to at least to some extent. And then just to add on to that tip, kind of like we talked about with like tip number 1 or 2, don't come up here and start waving stuff around, like, you know, scaring fish away and wearing bright colors and yelling all loud and throwing stuff in the water. Obviously, you're going to scare fish away, and that's not really ideal when you're trying to catch them. So something to keep in mind. All right, guys, so tip number 9, at least I'm pretty sure it's tip number 9. One of the most important things I think when you're bank fishing, especially when you're fishing an area that doesn't have a lot of access and you're just fishing one part of the bank, is being consistent and being persistent. I remember one time I was fishing with my dad, and we were bank fishing a lake. We didn't have a whole lot of access where we were at. we were actually camping, and he went back to the campsite because we had been out there for an hour or two and hadn't caught anything. And all I had was a spinning rod and a little crankbait. And I stayed out on the dock and I casted over and over and over 100 times until eventually I finally caught a bass. It was my first spotted bass, actually, to be exact. I say that to say this: consistency will pay off. If you're not catching fish where you're fishing and you know they're there, keep going back. Also, be persistent when you get there. Don't cast a couple times and say, oh yeah, they're not biting, and then leave. And honestly, that tip also works for if you're fishing from a kayak, a boat, canoe, I don't care, whatever, but it especially works if you're fishing from the bank. No, you gotta throw those worms are gross. What if they get in your body? Oh my gosh! Oh, I hope you guys got that blow up. That was super cool, and they are just missing my frog today. I don't know what's going on, but holy cow, that was a big one. Okay guys, last but not least, tip number 10 is going to be to utilize the sun and or the shade when available, depending on the time of year. So for example, if it is summer like it is right now, then you want to spend as much time fishing in the shade as you can, which is why we're doing a double take on this first spot that's in the shade. That's where the fish are going to be, and also that is where you are going to be most comfortable since you're on the bank in the heat as well. Vice versa, let's say it's winter time when we're kind of fishing in the morning or afternoon, we're going to fish the side of the pond or river or lake or whatever that heated up first in the sun, because that's oftentimes where a lot of fish are going to be versus in the cold in the shade. So you just need to pay attention to that kind of stuff. All right guys, so that's going to do it for my top 10 tips for bank fishing. If you guys like this style of video, it's a little bit different than what I normally do, let me know in the comments down below. I might do some more of these, but it was really just a quick little trip just to give you guys some tips out on the water, kind of as I'm doing it, sort of thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, share, all that stuff guys. Channel's growing, we're doing great. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a good one.